Actually, a lot of nanotechnology just flies under the radar, right? Because you buy it in your iPhone or your iPad, right, and you don't know it's there. But actually, there's a lot of advance that's gone into it. So I think that's going to continue. We're just going to see smarter, faster devices, right? That nanotechnologists have put their effort into. I mean, one thing that I think is creeping up on us a little bit. Is DNA sequencing technology, right? And that's just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and faster. And at some point, and I'm not sure, there's going to be a tipping point where it's cost effective for us, to get ourselves sequenced, right? And you'll have access to all your genetic information. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg will have access to all your genetic information, right? If you post it on Facebook, right? So I think there's going to be a point, and it may not be the next year, but it's certainly within the next 4 or 5 years where our genetic information is going to be absolutely readily available to us.
That tipping point, in my opinion, is going to come when you can get a lower premium potentially with an insurance company. I think they'll be the first people to step in.
That's right.
If you come up and you say, sequence my DNA, and if you're a healthy person, you can get a lower premium, then I think that'll be when we start seeing it come into society.
I got a phone call from my bank today asking me if I want life insurance, and I think in a couple of years they'll be asking me, would you like to take, get your DNA sequence, and then we'll see if we can offer you some premium reduction.
I get phone calls about funeral insurance.
Well, if they could sequence your DNA, they might be giving you a few more years here.
And if you start taking some of these anti-aging treatments,
right.
I'm curious. What is the target of anti-aging? I mean, where do they?
It's activating the telomerase.
Yeah, I thought it would be something like that. But is it? Can you just pick out that key point as the source of aging?
They've done it successfully in mice, but there's a lot of off-target effects, and they have yet to kind of work out. It does kind of tend things to become cancerous, as far as I'm aware.
Right.
But I'm not.
You want to head to Courtney Place on a Thursday night?
There's a sort of ethical question here, isn't there? I mean, I remember my PhD supervisor reckoned we would, years ago, that we would eventually be able to live forever, and I always thought philosophically this was wrong. But in a way, the research on ageing is really about improving the quality of life for older people rather than prolonging life. And I think there's a lot of resentment from younger people about the idea that so much money should go into prolonging life. But I certainly think that we should improve. We are going to live longer, and it's going to be good if we can prevent degeneration of brains and so on, and improve the quality of life. I think that's going to be good.
And there is always the singularity to look forward to. The point where I can put my entire brain into my iPod and just walk around on.
It's going to depend critically on who your internet service provider is. In New Zealand, the singularity is going to be a bit delayed.
Yeah, that would kind of suck.
Sorry, off your reach, your data cap.
Knowing me, that would happen in like a day.
Yeah.
Just that you have to have subpar existence for the next 29 days in a month. All right, so just before we finish up, I have one final question for everyone. What should New Zealand science and technology goals be for 2020?
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the ones we're working on, a lot of resources going in here, and because half of our emissions come from agriculture, it should be a focus is reducing emissions and mainly methane emissions from livestock. The backbone of our economy is built on dairy. It's a dirty industry, whether we like it or not, no matter how we dress it up. We have some of the best scientists in the world working on this problem. If by 2020 we can reduce emissions from livestock, say by 50%, I think that's a huge achievement.
And that's a real goal there, because there's an OECD report that specifically said New Zealand should focus in that area with regard to greenhouse gases as agriculture. That's where we could probably make a difference.
And that, to be fair, that's something the government's held out in its agricultural gas research consortium try and lead the world in that part of it, while other nations are doing the research on, for instance, Japan's leading the work on rice paddy, for instance, which is a really big greenhouse gas producer, and other nations are looking at arable farming or farming livestock indoors.
Well, I think we've got to lift our R&D spending. Right? We've got to get it up to we're at 1.3% now. We've got to double that or triple that to be competitive as a small country. I also think we've got to break down institutional barriers, and I think a real challenge for science, and I don't know how we're going to handle that in New Zealand, is the fact that science is becoming more open. Right? It's open science that's going to deliver the big hits over the next 20 years, and I don't think our institutions are well set up to cope with open science and the implications that has for the way science is done.
Okay, well that was fantastic, guys. I'm going to end it there, but I will thank each one of you again. So thanks to Peter, Ken and John from the Science Media Centre. Thanks to Ken Parrot, author of Open Parachute, and thanks to Shaun Hendy, author of A Measure of Science, as well as a few other bits and pieces. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Alf. That's absolutely fantastic. And I guess with that, we'll pretty much wind up. A couple of small things. A week or two back, we interviewed Susie Wiles from Infectious Thoughts about chickenpox lollipops and her work with glow-in-the-dark stuff and TB. And in fact, an animation that she's been working on with an Australia animator, Luke Harris, telling the story of what she does and why in under 3 minutes has now been released, and you can pick it up on her blog as well. We'll also link to it in the in the post that accompanies this podcast. Do have a look at it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And in terms of events, which you can see at sciblogs.co.nz/events, Elf, what have you picked out that might be interesting this week?
There's a bunch of different lectures going on. There's a series on climate change science on Friday afternoon, the economics of climate change. But my big pick for this week is that the Prime Minister's Science Prizes are being announced on Friday afternoon. So we shall look forward to that very much, I think.
It's always interesting. It's sometimes slightly controversial. For those who are not aware, this is the third year of the physics, and there's a total amount of money given away that is $1 million, with $500,000 going to the top prize. So it's a non-trivial amount of money and recognition that goes towards it. And previous winners have been, Alf, remind me again?
Paul Callahan's lab from Victoria University won the Science Research Lab. John Watt, so host of TVN7's Ever Wondered, won the Emerging Scientist Prize a couple of years back. A personal friend of mine, Elizabeth Connor, Science Communicator, won the Science Communication Prize, the inaugural one in 2009. They do pick them really well, I gotta say. I'm a big fan.
Absolutely. We've also had people like Dr. Bob Buckley and Dr. Jeff Talon for looking at superconductivity research. So that's definitely something to look forward to, and expect the weekend newspapers to be all about top science in New Zealand next weekend. Of course, we will be covering our thoughts on the matter as well.
We will indeed. So finally, just to finish up once again, thanks to everyone who makes this podcast possible, to State Shirt and Rian Xian for our opening and closing themes respectively, and to Sciblogs and the Scibloggers for coming along, talking to us and providing us with stories and discussion topics. You can subscribe to TOSP via iTunes. You can follow us or listen via YouTube at youtube.com/user/Sciblogspodcast, all one word, or you can follow our RSS feed at sciblogs.co.nz/TOSP. Or you can even watch us on the Zilm Cool Science channel, and you can find us and other quality science podcasts at sciencepodcasters.org. If you have any comments or suggestions, chuck something up on our blog, the TOSP blog at the Sciblogs site, and if you like us, please make sure to try and write a review or rate the podcast on iTunes, because it helps put us up on the front page. We can get more people listening. Or, just to share a link via Twitter or Facebook or any of the other kind of social networking things that people use. You can follow all the Sciblogs posts by subscribing to email alerts. You can follow them via Twitter or via RSS, and you can do all that by visiting the main Sciblogs homepage at sciblogs.co.nz. And if you're really keen, you can help support the site by getting Sciblogs apparel at zazzle.com/AIMEEMW. You can follow Amy and myself. You can follow our exploits via Twitter. Amy's Twitter handle is TEH_AIMEE, and mine is Kaiwata, KAIWHATA. Or you can just follow us via Sciblogs. Other than that, Amy, do you have anything to add?
No, that's it. Funnily enough, actually, one cool thing, and that is that we're now findable on Sony TV as well, which I found out about when a colleague asked me why the hell he could hear my voice coming out of his television.
Oh, fantastic. We'll get the links to those up on the site as well.
Yeah, and do check out another science podcast as well called Science on Top. It's an Australian podcast hosted by our friend Ed Brown, and occasionally Alf or I pop onto that and rant about things. So it's always worth going and having a look as well. And with that, certainly it's adieu from me.
And from Amy and myself, don't forget, stay curious.
Bye.
See you next week.